Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Into the woods. The last rays of sunlight slipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary Kate stood at the edge of the dense woods, their breaths mingling with the cool evening air. Just hours earlier, they had gathered in Brad's living room, the flickering light of the television illuminating their anxious faces as they recounted the events of the previous Halloween. Ashley's laughter echoed in their memories, a haunting reminder of the friend who had vanished without a trace. They had promised each other that they would never forget her, but as the days turned into weeks, the urgency to find her had grown palpable, a weight pressing down on their hearts. Are we really doing this? Caitlin's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, a nervous habit that had surfaced more frequently since Ashley's disappearance. The woods loomed before them, dark and foreboding, as if guarding secrets they were not meant to uncover. We have to, Brad replied, his tone firm but laced with uncertainty. He glanced at the others, searching their faces for reassurance. If we don't do this now, we might never find out what happened to her. Paige crossed her arms, her brow furrowed in thought. But what if we find something we're not ready for? What if she's not even in there? The words hung heavy in the air, a chilling possibility that sent shivers down their spines. Mary Kate stepped forward, her determination shining through the fear in her eyes. We owe it to Ashley to at least try. She wouldn't want us to forget her. We can't let her memory fade away. Her voice was steady, a beacon of strength that pulled them closer together. With a reluctant nod, Caitlin took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead. Okay, let's do this. But we stick together, no matter what. The others nodded in agreement, a silent pact forged in the fading light. As they stepped into the woods, the world around them transformed. The air grew cooler, the sounds of the outside world fading into a distant memory. The trees towered above them, their gnarled branches intertwining like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The ground was soft beneath their feet, a carpet of fallen leaves that crunched with every step, the scent of damp earth and decaying foliage filling their lungs. Do you remember that night? Brad asked, breaking the silence as they ventured deeper into the woods. When we all went to that haunted house. Ashley was so scared she wouldn't let go of my arm. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, but it quickly faded as the weight of their mission settled back in. Yeah, and she screamed when that fake ghost jumped out at her, Paige added, her voice tinged with nostalgia. I thought she was going to pass out. They all chuckled, the sound echoing through the trees, but the laughter felt hollow, a fragile mask over the grief they carried. Caitlin's heart ached at the memory. I just wish we could have done something to help her. Maybe if we had gone looking sooner. Her voice trailed off, the guilt creeping in like the shadows around them. Don't blame yourself, Mary Kate said softly, placing a comforting hand on Caitlin's shoulder. We didn't know. None of us did. The reassurance in her voice was a balm, but it couldn't erase the gnawing sense of regret that lingered in the air. As they walked, the trees seemed to close in around them, the path narrowing until it felt like they were being swallowed by the forest. The rustling leaves whispered secrets, and the wind carried an eerie chill that sent shivers down their spines. Brad led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the twisted roots and underbrush that threatened to trip them at every turn. Do you think we'll find anything? Caitlin asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if we find her? The thought hung heavy in the air, a specter that loomed over them. We'll find answers, Brad replied, though his voice wavered slightly. We have to. He felt the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, the responsibility of leading them through the unknown. The woods felt alive, as if they were being watched, and he couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush made them all jump. Caitlin gasped, her heart racing as she turned to Brad, her eyes wide with fear. What was that? Probably just a deer, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. But as they stood there, the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The woods were alive with sounds. Crickets chirping, leaves rustling, the distant hoot of an owl. But it felt as if something else lurked just beyond the edge of their perception. Let's keep moving, Paige urged, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. They pressed on, the darkness wrapping around them like a shroud. As they ventured deeper, the trees grew denser, their trunks thick and gnarled, twisting toward the sky like ancient sentinels. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, a rich, earthy aroma that filled their lungs. Brad's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced along the bark, and for a moment, he felt a pang of doubt. What if they were chasing ghosts? What if Ashley was lost to them forever? Do you think she's scared? Caitlin's voice broke through his thoughts, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I can't stop thinking about her alone in the dark. Brad turned to her, his heart aching at the sight of her vulnerability. We'll find her, Caitlin. I promise. The words felt hollow, but he needed to believe them, for her sake as much as his own. Mary-Kate stopped suddenly, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. Look! She exclaimed, pointing toward a clearing ahead. There's something over there. They moved cautiously toward the clearing, the underbrush giving way to a small, open space bathed in the pale light of the moon. In the center stood an old, dilapidated cabin, its wooden frame weathered and worn, vines creeping up the sides like fingers grasping for something long lost. The windows were dark, hollow eyes staring back at them, and a chill ran down Brad's spine. Do you think? Caitlin's voice trailed off, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. It's worth checking out, Brad said, though doubt gnawed at him. The cabin felt like a relic of the past, a place where secrets were buried and memories lingered like ghosts. Let's see if there's anything inside. As they approached, the floorboards creaked beneath their feet. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Berry-picking panic. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows through the dense canopy of trees. The air was thick with the earthy scent of damp leaves and the sweet, tangy aroma of wild berries. Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate had ventured deeper into the woods, their laughter echoing against the towering trunks, a stark contrast to the somber memories of their lost friend, Ashley. The weight of her absence lingered in the air, but they pushed it aside, determined to create a moment of joy amidst the uncertainty. Okay, team, Brad said, his voice buoyant as he crouched beside a bush heavy with ripe blackberries. Let's see who can collect the most berries for my pie. Winner gets to choose the movie tonight. Like that's a fair competition, Caitlin teased, rolling her eyes. You'll just end up picking the worst horror flick again. Hey, I happen to think, The Haunted House on Maple Street is a classic. Brad shot back, grinning as he plucked a handful of berries, their dark sheen glistening in the fading light. Classic. More like a classic disaster, Paige chimed in, her laughter bubbling up like the brook they had crossed earlier. She knelt beside Brad, her fingers deftly working through the thorny branches. But I'm in. Let's see who can gather the most before the sun sets. Mary-Kate, who had been quietly observing, finally joined in, her voice soft but playful. I'll take you both on. Just wait until you see my berry-picking skills. She winked, her competitive spirit igniting the air around them. As they scattered in different directions, the atmosphere shifted from light-hearted banter to a flurry of activity. Caitlin, her auburn hair catching the last rays of sunlight, darted between bushes, her fingers brushing against the cool, velvety skin of the berries. She felt a thrill of excitement. The thought of baking a pie for Brad filled her with warmth. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental in the wake of their shared grief. Hey, how many do you have? Caitlin called out, glancing over her shoulder at Paige, who was crouched low, her basket already half full. 10. And I'm just getting started. Paige replied, her eyes sparkling with mischief. What about you? I think I'm at 7. Caitlin hesitated, counting the handful of berries she had just picked. Wait. No, 8. I'm definitely at 8. 8. You're going to need to step it up. Brad shouted from a distance, his voice teasing yet encouraging. I'm at 12. Liar. Caitlin shot back, laughing. You're just trying to distract me. As they continued to pick, the woods around them seemed to come alive. The rustling of leaves whispered secrets, and the distant call of a bird echoed like a reminder of the world beyond their little competition. Yet, as the sun sank lower, a sense of urgency began to creep in, like the shadows that stretched across the forest floor. Okay, everyone. Caitlin called out, her voice rising above the sounds of nature. Let's do a berry count. They gathered together, their baskets brimming with berries, the vibrant colors a stark contrast to the darkening woods. All right, I've got 15. Mary-Kate announced, her eyes wide with pride. 15. Impressive. Brad said, clapping his hands. I'm at. Wait, how many did you say you had? Caitlin interrupted, her brow furrowing as she tried to keep track. I think I said 12. Brad replied, scratching his head, a sheepish grin on his face. More like 20. Paige chimed in, her laughter ringing out. You were just trying to make us feel better. Okay. I'm at 16. Brad conceded, raising his hands in mock surrender. 16. You're all liars. Caitlin laughed, shaking her head. I'm at. Let's see. I think I'm at 12. Caitlin, you just said you were at 8. Mary-Kate pointed out, her voice teasing. Fine. I'm at 12, but I'm going to get more. Caitlin insisted, her competitive spirit ignited. I can't let Brad win. As they continued their playful banter, Caitlin felt a rush of adrenaline. The woods were alive with their laughter, but the shadows were growing longer, and the air was turning cooler. She glanced at her watch, the digital numbers glowing ominously in the dim light. Guys, we need to hurry. Caitlin exclaimed, her heart racing. We have less than 20 minutes before it gets dark. The laughter faded, replaced by a palpable tension. The woods, once a playground, now felt like a labyrinth, the trees looming like silent sentinels. 20 minutes. Brad echoed, his voice suddenly serious. We should head back soon. Yeah, let's just grab a few more berries, Paige suggested, her eyes darting nervously around the trees. We can't leave without enough for the pie. Right, but we can't get lost either, Caitlin said, her voice trembling slightly. We need to stick together. Mary-Kate nodded, her expression shifting from playful to concerned. Let's just make sure we don't wander too far. We can't risk losing track of time. As they resumed picking, the atmosphere shifted again. The playful competition had morphed into a frantic race against the setting sun. Caitlin's heart pounded in her chest as she moved from bush to bush, her fingers trembling slightly as she plucked the berries. Each one felt like a small victory, but the looming darkness was a constant reminder of their urgency. Caitlin, how many do you have now? Brad called out, his voice strained. I think I'm at 15. She replied, her voice shaky. But we really need to. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed through the trees, cutting her off. The friends froze, their laughter dying in their throats. What was that? Paige whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I don't know, Caitlin admitted, her heart racing. It sounded like something moving. Maybe it is just a deer, Mary-Kate suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Or maybe it is a bear, Brad added, his eyes darting around the shadows. We should really get back. Okay, let's just grab a few more berries and then go, Caitlin urged, trying to keep her voice steady. We can't leave empty-handed. They resumed picking, but the tension hung heavy in the air. Each rustle of leaves sent shivers down Caitlin's spine, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Guys, I really think we should go, she said. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. A sense of loss. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced among the trees as Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate stumbled through the underbrush. The laughter from moments before had faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that hung heavy in the air. They had ventured into the woods with a sense of purpose, driven by the memory of their lost friend Ashley, who had vanished last Halloween in a house that whispered secrets of its own. The urgency to find her before the fading light swallowed them whole had propelled them forward, but now, as they rushed around collecting berries, the weight of their mission pressed down on them, heavy and suffocating. Why are we even here? Brad's voice broke the silence, a tremor of sadness lacing his words. He paused, leaning against a gnarled tree, his brow furrowed in thought. What are we really trying to do? It feels like we're just running in circles. Caitlin, her hands stained with berry juice, turned to him, her expression softening. We're looking for Ashley, Brad. We can't let her memory fade away. Not like this. Her voice was firm, but the tremor in her hands betrayed her own uncertainty. Mary-Kate, ever the joker, stepped forward with a playful grin. Come on, Brad. You're not going to start crying on us, are you? We're supposed to be berry picking, not berry sobbing. She winked, trying to lighten the mood, but the laughter that followed felt hollow, echoing off the trees like a ghost of their former joy. Paige, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. Maybe we should just go back to my house. We can bake that pie and talk about Ashley there. It's getting dark, and I don't want to be stuck in these woods when the sun goes down. Her voice was steady, but there was a hint of desperation in her eyes, as if she feared the woods held more than just memories. Caitlin shook her head, her determination unwavering. No, we can't give up now. We're so close. I can feel it. She glanced at the others, her heart pounding in her chest. We owe it to her to keep looking. Brad pushed himself off the tree, a mix of frustration and sadness swirling within him. But what if we don't find her? What if we're just wasting our time? His voice cracked, and he ran a hand through his tousled hair, the weight of loss pressing down on him like the thickening shadows around them. Brad, we can't think like that, Caitlin insisted, stepping closer to him. We have to believe she's out there. We have to believe we can bring her back. Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears, and for a moment, the air between them crackled with unspoken emotions. Mary-Kate, sensing the tension, clapped her hands together. All right, team. Let's focus. How about a little competition? Whoever finds the most berries in the next 10 minutes gets to choose the first movie for our pie party. She flashed a bright smile, her attempt to rally the group evident. Paige rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. You're ridiculous, Mary-Kate. But fine, I'm in. Let's see who can find the biggest berry. As they scattered in different directions, the atmosphere shifted. The playful banter resumed, but beneath it lay an undercurrent of anxiety. Brad wandered deeper into the woods, his heart heavy with thoughts of Ashley. The trees loomed around him, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. He could almost hear her laughter, a haunting melody that echoed in the rustling leaves. He paused, taking a deep breath, the earthy scent of damp soil filling his lungs. "Ashley," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Where are you?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, and he felt a pang of loss that cut deeper than he expected. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes caught his attention. He turned, heart racing, but it was only a rabbit darting away, its white tail flashing like a warning. He let out a shaky breath, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to him. The woods felt alive, but not in a comforting way. It was as if they were watching him, waiting for something to happen. "Hey, Brad!" Caitlin's voice called from a distance, breaking through his thoughts. "I found a patch over here. You should come see." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. He made his way toward her, the underbrush crunching beneath his feet. As he approached, he saw her kneeling beside a cluster of vibrant berries, their deep red hue contrasting sharply with the green leaves. "Look at these!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "They're perfect." Brad knelt beside her, a smile breaking through his earlier gloom. "Wow, those are amazing. We might actually have enough for a pie after all." He picked a few, their sweetness bursting in his mouth as he savored the flavor. For a moment, the weight of their mission faded, and he felt a sense of normalcy return. But as they continued to gather berries, the shadows deepened, and the air grew colder. Caitlin's laughter faded, replaced by a contemplative silence. "Do you ever think about what happened to Ashley?" she asked suddenly, her voice low. "I mean, really think about it." Brad's heart sank. "All the time," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't shake the feeling that we should have done something more. That we could have saved her." Caitlin looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I feel the same way. It's like we failed her somehow." She brushed a stray hair behind her ear, her hands trembling slightly. "I just wish we knew what happened that night." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Brad felt a lump form in his throat, the memories of that night flooding back. Ashley's laughter, the way her eyes sparkled with mischief, and the last time they had seen her, standing at the edge of the woods, her silhouette framed by the moonlight. "We didn't fail her," he said, though the conviction in his voice wavered. "We didn't know. None of us did." Caitlin nodded, but the sadness in her eyes remained. "I just wish we could find her. I wish we could bring her back." Her voice cracked, and Brad felt a surge of emotion welling up inside him. "Me too," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "But we have to keep looking. We owe it to her." He reached out, squeezing her shoulder gently, trying to convey the strength he didn't feel. Just then, Mary Kate and Paige emerged from the trees, their arms laden with berries. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The mansion in the clearing. The woods had swallowed them whole, the towering trees looming like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches whispering secrets in the wind. Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary Kate had ventured deeper than they'd intended, driven by a mix of nostalgia and urgency. They had come to honor Ashley, their lost friend, whose absence felt like a shadow stretching across their hearts. As they stumbled through the underbrush, the laughter and lightness of their earlier berry-picking escapade faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Caitlin had glanced at her watch, panic flashing in her eyes as she realized they had mere minutes left before darkness enveloped them entirely. Now, as they emerged into a clearing, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The air was thick with an electric tension, and the sky above had darkened ominously, swirling clouds gathering like a storm was brewing just for them. In the center of the clearing stood an old mansion, its silhouette stark against the darkening sky. The structure was grand yet foreboding, with ivy creeping up its stone walls and windows that glinted like watchful eyes. "Whoa," Mary Kate breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Is that your house, Paige? Paige squinted, her brow furrowing as she took in the mansion's crumbling facade. No, that's definitely not my house, she replied, a hint of unease creeping into her tone. I live in a split-level ranch, not whatever that is. Brad stepped forward, his heart racing. We shouldn't be here. This place looks abandoned. He glanced at Caitlin, who was scanning the surroundings with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What do you think? Should we go inside? Before Caitlin could respond, a sudden clap of thunder echoed through the clearing, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sky opened up, and rain began to pour, heavy and relentless. We need to get inside, Caitlin shouted, her voice rising above the roar of the storm. The four friends dashed toward the mansion, their laughter and shouts mingling with the sound of rain pounding against the earth. They reached the porch, breathless and soaked, and paused to catch their breath. The wooden boards creaked beneath their weight, and the air smelled of damp earth and mildew. Great. Now we're stuck here, Brad muttered, shaking water from his hair. Just what we needed. Mary-Kate leaned against the porch railing, her eyes wide with wonder. But look at it. It's like something out of a movie. I mean, it is creepy, but also kinda beautiful. Caitlin rolled her eyes, her focus still on the storm. This isn't a time for admiration, Mary-Kate. We need to figure out what to do next. She glanced at the door, which loomed before them like a portal to another world. Should we go inside? Are you kidding? Brad replied, his voice laced with skepticism. What if it is haunted? Or worse, haunted. Mary-Kate laughed, a lightness in her tone that contrasted sharply with the tension in the air. Come on, Brad. You're not scared of a little ghost, are you? Not scared, he shot back, crossing his arms defiantly. Just cautious. Paige stepped forward, her curiosity piqued. What if we find something in there? Something that could help us understand what happened to Ashley. Her voice was soft, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Caitlin's expression softened at the mention of their friend. We owe it to her to at least look. If there's a chance we can find a clue. She trailed off, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Brad sighed, the fight leaving him. Fine. But if we find a ghost, I'm blaming you all. With a collective breath, they approached the door. It was a massive thing, carved from dark wood and adorned with intricate designs that seemed to twist and writhe in the dim light. Caitlin reached for the handle, her heart pounding in her chest. The moment her fingers brushed the cold metal, a shiver ran down her spine. On 3. Mary-Kate suggested, her excitement bubbling over. 1, 2, 3. Caitlin pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously, revealing a dimly lit foyer. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the faint light filtering through grimy windows. The scent of decay and neglect filled their nostrils, and the atmosphere felt thick with history. Wow, Mary-Kate whispered, stepping inside. This place is incredible. Caitlin hesitated, glancing back at Brad, who lingered on the threshold. Are you coming? Yeah, he muttered, stepping inside reluctantly. Just keep your voices down, okay? As they ventured further into the mansion, the sound of the rain pounding against the roof created a rhythmic backdrop, almost like a heartbeat. The walls were lined with faded portraits, their subjects gazing down at the friends with expressions that seemed to shift in the shadows. Caitlin felt a chill run through her, as if the eyes of the past were watching their every move. Look at this place, Paige said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's like a time capsule. More like a tomb, Brad replied, his tone dark. I don't like this. Mary-Kate ignored him, moving toward a grand staircase that spiraled upward into darkness. Let's see what's up there. Wait. Caitlin called, But Mary-Kate was already halfway up the stairs, her excitement propelling her forward. "You guys, come on." Reluctantly, the others followed, their footsteps echoing in the empty hall. As they reached the top, they found themselves in a long corridor lined with doors, each one closed and shrouded in shadows. The air felt heavier here, as if the weight of the mansion's secrets pressed down on them. "Which one should we check first?" Mary-Kate asked, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Maybe we should stick together," Brad suggested, glancing nervously at the darkened doorways. "I don't want to get separated." Caitlin nodded, her heart racing. "Let's try this one." She pointed to a door at the end of the hall, its surface marred by age and neglect. As they approached, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the door creaked ominously. Caitlin hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorknob. "What if there's something in there?" "Like what?" Brad scoffed, though his voice lacked conviction. "A ghost. A monster. Or maybe just some old furniture," Paige chimed in, trying to lighten the mood. Caitlin took a deep breath, steeling herself. "We won't know unless we look." She turned the knob, and the door swung open with a groan. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Storm's End. The storm had come on suddenly, a tempest of wind and rain that swept through the woods like a banshee, leaving the four friends huddled on the porch of the old mansion. Just moments before, they had been laughing and teasing each other about their berry-picking escapades, but now the air was thick with tension and uncertainty. The echoes of thunder had faded into a haunting silence, leaving only the sound of their ragged breaths and the distant drip of water from the eaves. As the rain ceased, the world around them transformed. The once vibrant colors of the forest dulled into shades of gray, and the mansion loomed before them, its dark windows like watchful eyes. Brad, his heart racing, felt a mix of dread and excitement. They had come here to find Ashley, and now, standing on the threshold of the unknown, he could almost hear her voice calling to him from within. "Do you think she could be in there?" Caitlin whispered, her voice barely breaking the stillness. She shifted nervously, glancing at the door as if it might swing open at any moment. "Or maybe it is just a bunch of raccoons," Mary-Kate quipped, trying to lighten the mood, but her eyes betrayed her unease. The mansion's weathered facade, with its peeling paint and sagging roof, seemed to breathe a life of its own, and the shadows danced in the corners of her vision. Paige, arms crossed tightly against her chest, stared at the door with a mix of fear and determination. "We can't just stand here. If there's any chance Ashley is inside, we have to go in." Brad nodded, his resolve hardening. "We need to find out what's in there. If there's even a small chance she's inside, we can't leave without checking." The group exchanged glances, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. They had come to the woods to remember Ashley, to honor her memory, but now they were faced with the possibility of confronting whatever had taken her from them. "Okay, but let's stick together," Caitlin said, her voice steadier now. "No one goes off on their own." With a collective breath, they stepped off the porch and onto the creaking floorboards of the mansion. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of damp wood and something else. Something metallic that made Brad's stomach churn. The darkness enveloped them, and the only light came from the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. "Do you hear that?" Mary-Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They paused, straining to listen. A low, rhythmic thumping echoed from deeper within the mansion, like a heartbeat thrumming against the silence. Brad's heart raced in response, and he felt a chill creep down his spine. "Maybe it is just the wind," Paige suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. "Or maybe it is something else," Caitlin replied, her eyes wide with fear. "We should be careful." As they moved further into the mansion, the thumping grew louder, reverberating through the walls. The group huddled closer together, their hands brushing against one another as they navigated the dimly lit hallway. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and Brad couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. "Let's check that room," he said, pointing to a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, revealing a dusty parlor filled with old furniture draped in white sheets. The air was thick with the scent of mildew, and the floorboards groaned under their weight. "Looks like no one's been here in ages," Mary-Kate said, pulling a sheet off a nearby chair. "Maybe we'll find some clues about Ashley." As they began to search the room, Brad's eyes were drawn to a large, ornate mirror hanging on the wall. Its surface was clouded with age, but he could make out faint reflections of the others as they moved about the room. He stepped closer, feeling an inexplicable pull toward it. "Brad, come look at this," Caitlin called from the corner, her voice breaking his trance. He turned to see her standing beside a dusty bookshelf, a faded photograph clutched in her hand. "What is it?" he asked, crossing the room to join her. "It's a picture of Ashley," she said, her voice trembling. "Look at her." Brad took the photograph from Caitlin's hand, his heart sinking as he recognized the familiar smile of their lost friend. But as he examined the picture more closely, he noticed something strange. In the background, just behind Ashley, stood a shadowy figure, barely discernible but undeniably present. "Who is that?" he murmured, feeling a chill run through him. "I don't know," Caitlin replied, her brow furrowing. "But it looks like they're in front of this mansion." "Maybe it is a clue," Paige suggested, her voice rising with excitement. "We need to find out who that is." Just then, the thumping noise returned, louder and more insistent. It echoed through the parlor, shaking the dust from the ceiling. The friends exchanged fearful glances, their earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of the unknown. "Maybe we should leave," Mary-Kate said, her voice quaking. "This place gives me the creeps." "No," Brad said, his voice firm. "We can't leave yet. We're so close to finding something. We owe it to Ashley." Caitlin nodded, her determination rekindled. "Let's keep looking. We can't give up now." They moved deeper into the mansion, following the sound of the thumping, which seemed to lead them toward a narrow staircase at the back of the parlor. The stairs spiraled down into darkness, and the air grew colder as they descended. Each step felt like a descent into the unknown, and Brad's heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation. At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a dimly lit cellar. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dusty jars and strange artifacts, and the thumping noise was now accompanied by a low, mournful wail that sent shivers down Brad's spine. "What is that?" Paige whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. "I don't know," Brad replied, his eyes scanning the room. "But we have to find out." As they moved further into the cellar, the wailing grew louder, and Brad felt a sense of urgency wash over him. He had to find Ashley. He had to know what had happened to her. Suddenly, a door at the far end of the cellar burst open, and a figure emerged, silhouetted against the dim light. Brad's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the familiar outline. "Ashley," he called, his voice trembling with hope. The figure turned, and for a moment, Brad's heart soared. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Inside the mansion. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that seemed to echo the friends' own unease. Just moments ago, Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate had been laughing and joking in the woods, their playful banter a thin veil over the weight of their shared grief for Ashley, who had vanished last Halloween. Now, standing on the porch of the old mansion, the air thick with tension and the scent of damp earth, they felt the gravity of their situation settle around them like a heavy fog. The storm had come and gone in an instant, leaving them with an unsettling silence that amplified the whispers of their fears. Are we really doing this? Caitlin asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she peered into the darkened entryway. The mansion loomed before them, its windows like hollow eyes staring back, and the door creaked ominously as if inviting them in, or warning them to stay away. Why not? We're already here, Brad replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing at the others. We might find something that leads us to Ashley. Mary Kate, ever the optimist, stepped forward, her curiosity piqued. Come on, it is just an old house. What's the worst that could happen? She flashed a grin, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The shadows of the mansion seemed to swallow her light, and for a moment, Brad wondered if she was trying to convince herself as much as the rest of them. Paige hesitated, her brow furrowing. I don't know, guys. This place gives me the creeps. She glanced back at the woods, where the trees swayed ominously in the wind, as if urging her to turn back. What if we get lost in there? Or what if we find something? Caitlin countered, her determination shining through her fear. We owe it to Ashley to at least try. With a resigned sigh, Paige stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Fine. But if we hear anything weird, we're out of there. The four friends exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. They took a collective breath, steeling themselves for whatever lay ahead, and stepped into the mansion. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of mildew and dust. As they crossed the threshold, the door creaked shut behind them, sealing them in a world that felt suspended in time. The dim light filtering through the grimy windows cast long shadows across the room, revealing a space filled with dusty furniture draped in white sheets, like ghosts waiting to be unveiled. Wow, this place is something, Mary Kate said, her voice echoing in the silence. She brushed her fingers along the back of a faded armchair, leaving a trail in the dust. It's like a museum of forgotten memories. More like a graveyard, Caitlin muttered, her eyes scanning the room. I can't shake the feeling that we shouldn't be here. Brad stepped further inside, drawn by an inexplicable pull. Look at this, he said, pointing to a large mirror hanging on the wall. Its surface shimmered oddly, catching the light in a way that made it seem almost alive. It's just like the one where Ashley disappeared. The others gathered around, their curiosity piqued. The mirror was ornate, its frame intricately carved with swirling patterns that seemed to dance in the dim light. But it was the reflection that held them captive. Instead of their own faces, they saw distorted images. Flickers of their fears and insecurities, twisted and exaggerated. What the hell? Mary Kate gasped, stepping back. That's creepy. Maybe it is just old glass, Paige suggested, though her voice wavered. It's probably just reflecting the light weirdly. No, it is more than that, Caitlin insisted, her eyes locked on the mirror. It feels like it is showing us something. Something we don't want to see. As if in response to her words, a low whisper echoed through the room, sending shivers down their spines. It was a soft, haunting sound, like the rustle of leaves or the distant murmur of voices. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, the atmosphere thickening with tension. Did you hear that? Brad asked, his heart racing. It sounded like someone was talking. Maybe it is just the wind, Paige said, though her voice lacked conviction. Or the house settling. But Caitlin shook her head, her expression serious. No, it is not the wind. It is like it is echoing our fears. What if it is Ashley? What if she's trying to tell us something? Or warn us, Mary Kate added, her eyes wide with fear. We should leave. Wait, Brad said, his voice firm. We can't just run away. We need to find out what's going on. If there's a chance Ashley is here, we can't ignore it. Caitlin nodded, her determination reigniting. We have to keep looking. We owe it to her. With a shared sense of purpose, they moved deeper into the mansion, the whispers growing louder, swirling around them like a dark cloud. Each step felt heavier, the air thick with unspoken fears and unresolved grief. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows danced menacingly, as if alive. They entered a grand hallway lined with portraits, the faces of long-gone residents watching them with hollow eyes. The air was cooler here, and the whispers transformed into fragmented phrases, echoing their insecurities. Why didn't you save her? One voice hissed, sending a chill down Brad's spine. Why didn't you see the signs? Another echoed, and he felt the weight of guilt settle heavily on his shoulders. Stop it! He shouted, clenching his fists. This isn't real. Brad, calm down, Caitlin said, her voice steady but laced with concern. It's just the house playing tricks on us. Or it is something more, Mary Kate whispered, her eyes darting around as if expecting something to leap out at them. We need to stick together. They pressed on, the whispers fading into a low hum as they entered a dimly lit parlor. The room was filled with antique furniture, covered in dust and cobwebs, and a grand piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. The atmosphere was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the friends exchanged nervous glances. Look at this, Caitlin said, pointing to a dusty bookshelf filled with old books. Maybe there's something here that can help us. As they began to sift through the books, the whispers returned, more insistent now, echoing their fears and regrets. You should have been there, one voice lamented, and Brad felt a pang of guilt twist in his gut. Stop it! He shouted again. Chapter 7. Chapter 7. The chase begins. The air in the mansion was thick with dust and dread, a palpable tension that clung to the friends like the cobwebs draping the corners of the room. Just moments ago, they had been standing in the dim light of the foyer, their laughter echoing off the peeling wallpaper as they reminisced about Ashley. But now, the atmosphere had shifted, darkened by the whispers that seemed to seep from the very walls. Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary Kate had just discovered the mirror. A shimmering portal that had sent chills down their spines. It was a mirror that reminded them too much of the one where Ashley had vanished, and as they stood there, the air crackled with an unspoken fear. The storm outside had quieted, but inside, the mansion felt alive, thrumming with a sinister energy. Then, without warning, a shadow darted past them, a fleeting silhouette that sent a jolt of terror through the group. Did you see that? Caitlin gasped, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes wide with fear. See what? Mary Kate replied, her bravado faltering as she glanced around the room. It was right there. Caitlin pointed, her finger trembling. Before anyone could respond, the shadow reappeared, this time more defined, a dark figure that loomed at the end of the hallway. It was tall and menacing, its features obscured by the dim light. Panic surged through Brad as he instinctively stepped forward, his heart racing. Run! He shouted, his voice breaking the spell of shock that had gripped them. The four friends bolted, their footsteps echoing against the wooden floorboards as they raced down the corridor. The figure pursued them, its presence a chilling reminder of the danger they were in. Where do we go? Paige cried, her breath coming in quick gasps as they rounded a corner. Anywhere but here, Brad yelled, glancing back to see the shadow gaining on them. They stumbled into a room filled with old furniture, the air thick with the scent of mildew. A heavy wooden table stood in the center, surrounded by chairs that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. Over there. Caitlin pointed to a door at the far end of the room. As they sprinted toward it, Brad felt a sudden weight in the air, as if the mansion itself was trying to hold them back. He glanced over his shoulder just in time to see the figure lunging forward, its arm outstretched. Paige! He shouted, realizing she had fallen behind, her foot caught on a loose floorboard. Without thinking, he dashed back, grabbing her arm just as the shadow reached them. Go! He urged, pulling her to her feet. Brad, we can't leave you. Paige protested, panic etched across her face. Just go. He insisted, shoving her toward the door. With a final glance back, Brad felt a surge of adrenaline as he pushed her through the doorway. The figure was almost upon them, its breath a cold whisper against his skin. Now! He shouted, and they all tumbled through the door, slamming it shut behind them. They found themselves in a narrow hallway, the walls lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow them. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the dim light flickered ominously. What was that thing? Mary-Kate panted, her eyes darting around as if expecting the figure to materialize again. I don't know, Brad admitted, his heart still racing. But we need to stick together. Caitlin nodded, her expression serious. We can't let it separate us again. We need to find a way out. Or find Ashley, Paige added, her voice trembling. Right, Brad said, trying to keep his focus. Let's keep moving. They crept down the hallway, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The whispers seemed to grow louder, echoing their fears and doubts. Do you think Ashley is here? Caitlin asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Brad replied, his mind racing. But if she is, we have to find her. As they reached the end of the hallway, they found themselves in a large room filled with dusty furniture and a grand piano that looked like it hadn't been played in years. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and something else. Something metallic. Look. Mary-Kate pointed to a door on the far side of the room. That might lead outside. Let's check it out, Brad said, leading the way. As they approached the door, the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a storm. Brad felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed the door open, revealing a dark staircase leading down into the depths of the mansion. Should we go down there? Caitlin asked, her voice trembling. It's better than staying here, Brad replied, glancing back at the room. We have to keep moving. They descended the staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The darkness enveloped them, and Brad could feel the weight of the mansion pressing down on them. Do you hear that? Paige whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Brad strained to listen, and in the distance, he could hear a faint sound. A soft, melodic humming that seemed to beckon them deeper into the darkness. What is that? Mary-Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Brad admitted, his heart pounding. But we have to find out. As they reached the bottom of the staircase, they found themselves in a dimly lit room filled with strange artifacts and dusty bookshelves. The humming grew louder, resonating through the air like a haunting lullaby. Look at this, Caitlin said, pointing to a dusty book on a nearby table. It looks like it has been opened recently. Brad approached the table, his curiosity piqued. The book was old, its pages yellowed with age, but the words were still legible. He flipped through the pages, his heart racing as he read about the mansion's dark history. Stories of lost souls and forbidden rituals. This place is cursed, he murmured, feeling a chill run down his spine. Maybe that's why Ashley disappeared, Paige suggested, her voice trembling. Or maybe she's still here, Mary-Kate added, her eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, the humming stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that enveloped the room. Brad felt a shiver run down his spine as he glanced around, the shadows seeming to shift and dance in the dim light. Did you hear that? Caitlin whispered, her voice barely audible. Before anyone could respond, The door they had entered through slammed shut, echoing through the room like a thunderclap. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. The Lake of Shadows. The air was thick with tension as the four friends stumbled out of the mansion, their hearts racing from the encounter with the shadowy figure. Brad had just saved Paige from a precarious shelf, showcasing a bravery they hadn't known he possessed. But as they fled into the night, the echoes of their fears clung to them like the dampness of the storm that had just passed. Caitlin's mind raced with thoughts of Ashley, the urgency of their search overshadowed by the looming darkness of the woods. They had come here to find their lost friend, but now they were lost themselves, both in the forest and in their own emotions. As they sprinted away from the mansion, the trees seemed to close in around them, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting eerie shadows that danced along the forest floor. Caitlin glanced back, her breath hitching in her throat. What was that thing? She gasped, her voice trembling. I don't know, but we need to keep moving. Brad urged, his eyes wide with adrenaline. He could feel the weight of their fear pressing down on him, but he refused to let it consume him. Not when Caitlin was by his side, her determination shining through the fear. Mary Kate, ever the jokester, tried to lighten the mood. Maybe it was just a really angry raccoon. You know, the kind that's had too much caffeine. But her laughter fell flat against the backdrop of their panic. Focus, Mary Kate. Caitlin snapped, her frustration bubbling over. This isn't a joke. We need to find a way out of here. Just then, the ground beneath Caitlin's feet gave way, and she stumbled forward, her arms flailing as she lost her balance. Caitlin! Brad shouted, lunging toward her, but it was too late. She fell into the dark water of a hidden lake, the surface rippling ominously as she splashed down. Help! Caitlin cried, panic rising in her chest as the cold water enveloped her. She struggled to keep her head above the surface, the shadows beneath the water swirling like dark tendrils, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The lake was a mirror of the night sky, reflecting the chaos above, but it felt alive, as if it were a creature of its own. Caitlin! Brad shouted again, his heart racing as he rushed to the edge of the lake. Without a second thought, he dove into the frigid water, the shock of the cold hitting him like a punch to the gut. He swam toward her, his arms cutting through the water with determination. I'm coming. Just hold on. Caitlin's limbs felt heavy, the weight of the water dragging her down. She gasped for air, her lungs burning as she fought against the shadows that seemed to reach for her. Brad! She cried, her voice barely breaking the surface. I'm right here. He called back, his voice muffled by the water. He reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm, and he pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. I've got you. Just kick your legs. With a surge of adrenaline, Caitlin began to kick, her instincts taking over as she fought to stay afloat. Brad's grip was firm, and she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Together, they broke through the surface, gasping for air as the moonlight illuminated their faces. Thank you, Caitlin panted, her heart racing as she clung to him, the warmth of his body contrasting sharply with the chill of the water. I thought I was going to drown. You're okay now, Brad reassured her, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. We need to get out of here. He began to swim toward the shore, pulling her along with him, their bodies moving in sync as they fought against the current. Meanwhile, Mary Kate and Paige stood frozen at the water's edge, their eyes wide with shock. What do we do? Paige shouted, her voice trembling. Just stay back. Mary Kate yelled, her gaze fixed on the lake. We can't let that thing get to them. As they watched, a sudden rustling in the trees caught their attention. A small frog hopped into view, its bright green skin glistening in the moonlight. Mary Kate, ever the animal lover, couldn't help but giggle. Look at that little guy. He's brave, just like Brad. But just as she spoke, a branch above them cracked ominously, and Mary-Kate instinctively ducked. The branch fell, narrowly missing Brad as he emerged from the water, Caitlin clinging to him like a lifeline. "Watch out!" he shouted, his voice laced with urgency. "Whoa!" Mary-Kate exclaimed, her heart racing as she realized how close they had come to disaster. "That was too close. Let's get them out of the water," Paige urged, her voice rising above the chaos. She rushed forward, reaching for Caitlin as Brad pulled her onto the shore. The moment they were safe, Caitlin collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "Are you okay?" Brad asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he knelt beside her. The adrenaline was still coursing through him, but all he could focus on was her safety. "I think so," Caitlin replied, her voice shaky as she looked up at him. "Thank you for saving me." Brad's heart swelled at her words, but before he could respond, Mary-Kate interrupted, her eyes wide with excitement. "Did you see that frog? It was like he was trying to warn us." Caitlin couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the moment breaking as she wiped water from her face. "A frog? Really, Mary-Kate? That's what you're focused on right now?" "Hey, it is a sign," Mary-Kate insisted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Frogs are good luck, right? Maybe we'll find Ashley next." Paige rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. "Let's hope so. But first, we need to figure out where we are." As they gathered themselves, the shadows around the lake seemed to shift, the darkness deepening as if the forest itself were alive. Brad felt a chill run down his spine, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "We can't stay here," he said, glancing toward the trees. "We need to keep moving." Caitlin nodded, her expression serious. "We have to find a way out of this forest. Ashley wouldn't want us to give up." "Right," Brad agreed, his determination rekindled. "Let's stick together and keep our eyes open for anything unusual." As they began to move, the shadows whispered around them, the sound like a distant echo of their fears. The lake shimmered behind them, a dark mirror reflecting their uncertainty. Chapter 9. Chapter 9. Facing Fears. The air was thick with tension as Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate huddled together in the dimly lit hallway of the mansion. The echoes of their frantic escape still reverberated in their minds, the shadows of the past and present intertwining in a dance of fear. Just moments ago, they had been running for their lives, the chilling presence of a shadowy figure hot on their heels. Now, they stood in a fragile circle, hearts pounding, breaths shallow, as they faced the reality of their situation. They had come to find Ashley, but instead, they had stumbled into a labyrinth of their own fears. "Okay, we need to regroup," Caitlin said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We can't let whatever that was chase us away from our goal. We have to find Ashley." Mary-Kate nodded, her eyes wide with a mix of determination and lingering fear. "But how? That thing. It felt like it was feeding off our panic. We can't let it get to us." Brad, still dripping from his plunge into the lake, wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "We need a plan. We can't just run around aimlessly. If we're going to find Ashley, we have to confront whatever that was." Paige, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we use the mirror? The one that shimmered like it was alive. Maybe it can help us communicate with Ashley." Caitlin's eyes lit up with hope. "That's a great idea. If we can reach her somehow, maybe we can bring her back. But we have to be careful. Whatever that shadow was, it is not just a figment of our imagination." The group exchanged glances, each one grappling with their own fears. They had come to the mansion seeking answers, but now they were faced with the daunting task of confronting their own insecurities. The air felt electric, charged with unspoken emotions and the weight of their shared history. As they made their way back to the room with the mirror, the atmosphere shifted. The mansion seemed to breathe around them, the walls creaking and groaning as if alive. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, and the whispers from before returned, swirling around them like a haunting melody. "Stay close," Brad urged, his protective instincts kicking in. He led the way, his heart racing not just from fear, but from the weight of responsibility he felt for his friends. They had all been through so much together, and the thought of losing anyone else was unbearable. When they reached the room, the mirror stood before them, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. It felt both inviting and foreboding, a portal to the unknown. Caitlin stepped forward, her reflection rippling like water disturbed by a stone. "Okay, let's do this," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We need to focus on Ashley. We need to remember her." As they gathered around the mirror, each friend took a moment to reflect. Not just on the surface, but on their memories of Ashley. The laughter they shared, the secrets whispered under the stars, the warmth of friendship that had once felt unbreakable. "Remember that time we all went to the lake?" Mary-Kate said, a smile breaking through her fear. "Ashley dared us to jump off the highest rock. I thought I was going to die, but she just laughed and jumped right after me." "Yeah, and she swam like a fish," Paige added, her voice softening. "She was always so fearless. I wish I could be more like her." Brad felt a lump form in his throat. "She wouldn't want us to be scared. She'd want us to fight for her." Caitlin nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Let's do it. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They all pressed their hands against the mirror, their palms warm against the cool glass. The surface rippled, and for a moment, it felt as if they were standing at the edge of a vast ocean, the depths calling to them. "Ashley!" Caitlin shouted, her voice echoing in the stillness. "If you can hear us, please come back. We miss you." The mirror shimmered, and a soft glow began to emanate from its depths. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a tempest, and the shadows in the corners of the room began to coalesce into a figure. "Caitlin!" A voice echoed, soft yet haunting. It was unmistakably Ashley's, but it was laced with an otherworldly quality that sent chills down their spines. "Is that you?" Caitlin cried, her heart racing. "We're here to bring you home." The figure in the mirror flickered, revealing a glimpse of Ashley's face, her expression a mix of sadness and longing. "You shouldn't have come here. It's not safe." "Why? What happened to you?" Brad asked, stepping closer, his voice filled with urgency. I'm trapped." Ashley's voice trembled, and the shadows around her seemed to pulse with her emotions. "This place feeds on your fears. It's trying to keep me here." Mary-Kate gasped, her hands trembling against the mirror. "What do we do? How can we help you?" "You have to face your fears," Ashley said, her voice growing fainter. "Only then can you break the hold this place has over me. You must confront what you're afraid of." The shadows around Ashley thickened, swirling like a storm. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of voices, each one echoing their deepest insecurities. "I'm not brave enough," Brad heard himself say, the words slipping from his lips before he could stop them. "I couldn't save you, Ashley. I couldn't even save Caitlin." "Stop!" Caitlin shouted, her voice breaking through the noise. "You're stronger than you think, Brad. You saved me. You're always there for us." The shadows recoiled, as if stung by her words. Brad felt a surge of warmth at her encouragement, but the fear still clung to him like a heavy cloak. "I'm not good enough," Paige whispered, her voice barely audible. I always feel like I'm in Ashley's shadow. I don't know how to be myself without her. No, Mary-Kate exclaimed, stepping forward. You are enough, Paige. You've always been enough. We all have our strengths. The shadows writhed, and the mirror flickered violently, as if responding to their confessions. The whispers grew louder, a chaotic symphony of doubt and fear. I'm scared of losing you all, Caitlin admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. I can't bear the thought of being alone. The figure of Ashley flickered, her expression softening. You're not alone. You have each other. You have to believe in that. Chapter 10. Chapter 10. A new beginning. The air was thick with tension as Brad, Paige, Caitlin, and Mary-Kate stood in the dimly lit hallway of the mansion, their hearts pounding in unison. Just moments ago, they had confronted the shadowy figure that had haunted their every step, a manifestation of their deepest fears. With trembling hands and racing thoughts, they had faced the darkness together, breaking the hold it had over them. But as the walls began to tremble and the floorboards creaked ominously beneath their feet, they realized that the mansion itself was crumbling around them. Run! Caitlin shouted, her voice slicing through the oppressive silence. The friends turned on their heels, sprinting toward the entrance they had come through, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with the distant rumble of thunder. The once grand foyer, with its peeling wallpaper and dust-covered chandeliers, now felt like a labyrinth of despair, each corner shadowed by the remnants of their fears. Where's the door? Mary-Kate gasped, her eyes wide with panic. The walls seemed to shift, the exit obscured by the swirling dust and debris that filled the air. It's right there. Brad pointed, his voice steady despite the chaos. We can make it. As they dashed forward, the mansion groaned, a deep, resonant sound that sent shivers down their spines. The shadows flickered, and for a moment, Brad thought he saw Ashley's face among them, a fleeting glimpse of the friend they had lost. But he shook his head, forcing himself to focus. They had to escape, to honor her memory by living, not by being trapped in this haunted place. Keep going, Caitlin urged, her determination igniting a spark of hope in the group. They barreled through the doorway, bursting into the cool night air just as the first cracks of dawn began to break over the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of lavender and gold, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just fled. They stumbled onto the porch, breathless and wide-eyed, the weight of their shared experience settling heavily on their shoulders. The mansion behind them groaned one last time before collapsing in on itself, a cloud of dust and debris swirling into the air like a final farewell. Did we really just do that? Paige whispered, her voice trembling as she leaned against the porch railing, her heart still racing. I can't believe we faced it. We faced our fears, Brad replied, his gaze fixed on the ruins of the mansion. And we did it together. Mary-Kate let out a shaky laugh, brushing her hair back from her face. I thought I was going to die in there. But then I remembered how ridiculous it was to be scared of a shadow. I mean, come on. Caitlin smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. We didn't find Ashley, but we found something else. We found each other. The group fell silent, the weight of their unspoken thoughts hanging in the air. They had come to the woods searching for a friend, but they had emerged with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. The bond they shared had been tested and strengthened, forged in the fires of fear and uncertainty. Let's go home, Brad said finally, breaking the silence. We can't forget Ashley, but we can't let her memory hold us back either. As they turned to leave, a soft breeze rustled the leaves around them, carrying with it the faintest whisper of laughter. It was as if Ashley herself was bidding them farewell, encouraging them to move forward. The group walked in silence, the path illuminated by the soft glow of dawn. The woods, once dark and foreboding, now felt alive with possibility. Birds chirped overhead, and the scent of damp earth mingled with the fresh morning air, invigorating their spirits. Hey, what if we made a tradition out of this? Mary-Kate suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Every year, we could come back here, not to find Ashley, but to celebrate her memory. We could bring a pie, or something. I like that idea, Caitlin said, her voice filled with warmth. It would be a way to keep her with us, to remember the good times. Brad nodded, a smile creeping onto his face. And we can make new memories too. We can explore other places, have adventures. We don't have to be afraid anymore. Paige glanced at him, her expression softening. You're right. We've been through so much together. We can't let fear dictate our lives. As they reached the edge of the woods, the sunlight poured over them, bathing them in warmth. It felt like a new beginning, a chance to redefine their lives without the shadow of loss looming over them. Let's promise to always be there for each other, Caitlin said, her voice steady. No matter what happens. They all nodded, a silent agreement binding them together. In that moment, they were not just friends. They were a family, united by their shared experiences and the love they held for one another. As they stepped onto the familiar path leading back to their town, Brad felt a sense of peace wash over him. The memories of Ashley would always be a part of them, but they were ready to embrace the future. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught their attention. They turned to see a figure emerging from the trees, a silhouette against the brightening sky. The group froze, their hearts racing once more, but this time not from fear. Who's there? Brad called out, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a girl with long, dark hair and a familiar smile. Hey, guys. I've been looking for you. Ashley. Caitlin gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. The girl smiled, her eyes sparkling with mischief. You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun without me, did you? The world around them faded, the dawn's light dimming as they stood frozen in shock. Was this a trick of the mind, a cruel joke played by the remnants of their fears? Or was it truly Ashley, returned from the shadows that had claimed her? Brad's heart raced as he stepped forward, the weight of everything they had experienced crashing down on him. Is it really you? Ashley laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees like music. Of course it is. Now come on, I have so much to tell you. As the sun broke free from the horizon, casting golden rays across the landscape, the friends stood together, united once more. The past was behind them, but the future shimmered with promise, ready to unfold in ways they could never have imagined. And as they took their first steps toward this new beginning, they knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together.